It was supposed to be just another Monday. The kind of morning where lockers clanged, hallways echoed with rushed footsteps, and announcements crackled through tired speakers above. A girl walked into school like she always did. She had math after homeroom, theater practice after lunch, a test she didn't want to take, a crush she hadn't told anyone about. And yet, she never walked out again. No one saw her leave. No one saw her taken. She was just gone. And for 28 years, the school moved on. New students filled the classrooms. Teachers retired. Walls were repainted. Memories faded. But the story never fully left. It lingered in the silence between classes. In the parts of the building, no one seemed to enter anymore. And behind one door in particular, sealed shut, buried in dust, and left off the official blueprint, something waited. It was a janitor who found it. Or maybe it was a renovation worker. The reports conflict. The details blur. But what they found didn't. A backpack. Still zipped, still intact. Still right where it had been left nearly 3 decades ago. Its discovery changed everything. You see, this wasn't just a missing girl case. This was a place that had been holding its breath. And that breath, the one that had been trapped inside concrete, inside chalkboards, inside floorboards for nearly 30 years, was about to be released. The backpack wasn't empty, and it wasn't silent. Inside were pages that had no names. A cassette tape with no voice. Personal belongings untouched by time, as if she had just slipped out for a moment and never came back. But the most unsettling part wasn't what was inside the backpack. It was where it had been found. A room that shouldn't exist. A room no one remembered. A room that doesn't appear on any official map, yet had been sealed and untouched since 1994. Why was her bag there? Why was that door locked? Why did the clock stop at 9:17 that morning? And why, after all this time, does no one seem willing to talk? This is not a ghost story. This is not a legend. This is a story about a girl who vanished and a school that tried to bury what it knew. But walls remember. So do floorboards. And sometimes, the silence in a place speaks louder than any confession ever could. This isn't just a backpack. It's a time capsule. It's a message. It's a warning. And tonight, we're going to open it. The last Monday morning. She wasn't late that day. That's the first thing everyone agreed on. She walked through the front doors at exactly 7:36 a.m., caught in the frame of a now faded security tape, the kind recorded on grainy VHS and stored in a box no one touched for years. She wore her favorite sweater, light gray, slightly oversized. The sleeves covered most of her hands. A denim backpack hung over one shoulder. Not new, not old. Just hers. One braid slipped down her back. The other was falling apart. She had done it herself in a hurry. That morning, she skipped breakfast. Her mother remembered that part vividly. She said she wasn't hungry, just tired. She poured a glass of orange juice, drank half, and left it sweating on the kitchen counter. The glass stayed there all day. Her mother didn't move it. Not after the phone call. Not after the police. Not after the headlines. It stayed exactly where she left it. The weather was gray, overcast, with a strange warmth in the air that didn't match the season. Inside the school, it was business as usual. Morning announcements echoed off concrete walls. A few teachers complained about flickering lights. The bell rang late. Small things. Things no one would remember. If not for what came next. She spoke to 3 people that morning. A friend from theater said she was nervous about something, but didn't explain. A boy from biology asked if she had the homework answers. She did. She handed them to him without a word. And a teacher in the hallway said she looked pale. That teacher would later say her eyes looked like they hadn't slept. Not just tired, hollow. She walked toward the East Wing at 9:12 a.m. No one saw her after that. She didn't make it to class. Her seat sat empty, but no one questioned it. Kids skipped all the time. She didn't call home. She didn't use her locker again. She didn't leave the building. For months, police scoured the area. They searched the woods, drained nearby creeks, interviewed students and teachers until stories blurred. Nothing, not a single trace. And then the trail went cold. But that last morning, it stayed frozen in the minds of those who were there. Because something about it felt off. Not dramatic, not obvious, just off. Like a shift in pressure no one could explain. And now, decades later, we're looking back at every frame, every footprint, every word she said or didn't say. Because the answers were never far. They were inside the school all along. Echoes over the intercom. It started as a normal school day until the voice came over the intercom. At 10:21 a.m., while most students were in second period, the speakers cracked softly, that familiar, hollow buzz that always came just before an announcement. Students barely looked up. Most expected a routine message, a lunch menu change, a reminder about early dismissal, maybe a call for someone to report to the office. But what came through wasn't any of that. A single name, her name, Lillian. Just that, nothing else. No instruction. No, please report to the office. No explanation. Just her name, spoken slowly, clearly, once, then silence. Some students looked at each other, confused. Others laughed awkwardly. A few teachers paused their lessons for a second and shrugged and kept going. No one thought much of it in the moment. But that was only the beginning. At 10:24, her name was called again. This time, it was different, softer, slower, as if the voice was struggling to say it. Almost like the speaker had been moved away from the mouth, or like the person speaking was unsure. It wasn't the principal. It wasn't the secretary. Both denied making the announcement. There were only 3 people authorized to use the intercom system that day, and none of them were near the front office at that hour. The logbook, which usually recorded who accessed the system and when, showed no entry. Blank, as if no one had been there, as if the announcement had triggered itself. Then, at 10:31, a third time. This time, students described the voice as wrong, like it didn't belong to anyone they knew. Some said it sounded female, others male. Some said it didn't sound human at all, but it said her name again, and nothing more. The school went still, not panicked, just confused. Teachers stepped out of their classrooms. Some walked to the front office to ask what was going on, but no one had any answers. She was already gone by then, had been for over an hour, and yet the building was calling her name. No one talked about it after. It was dismissed as a glitch in the system, a crossed wire. Someone must have pressed the wrong button. Maybe a recording played by mistake, but it wasn't a recording. Everyone who heard it agreed on that. It felt intentional. One student years later, during an interview for a true crime documentary, said something that still haunts people who remember that day. It wasn't like someone was trying to get her to the office. It was like someone was trying to remind us she was still there. Like the building itself didn't want us to forget her. And they didn't, not for a long time. But eventually, memory fades. Graduation comes, teachers retire, students move on. The speakers, once replaced, stopped buzzing. The system was upgraded, digitalized. No more static, no more slow clicks. Just clean, perfect sound. And yet, 28 years later, during the re-inspection of the building before its demolition, something strange happened. A contractor, working alone near the East Wing, reported hearing something faint from one of the old ceiling speakers. He couldn't make out the words, but he said it was a name, repeated, soft, lingering. There was no power to that section of the school. No generator, no test being run. The speakers were dead, and yet they spoke. When asked what he heard, the man simply said, "I don't want to talk about it, but if you ask me, I think this place remembers her." In most buildings, silence is just silence. But some places echo, not with sound, but with memory. And when a memory is never given closure, sometimes it finds its own way to be heard. The room no one used. It wasn't on the blueprints. Not the official ones, anyway. When Lillian's backpack was discovered 28 years later, it wasn't found in a classroom, locker, or forgotten closet. It was found behind a locked door at the end of a hallway no one walked down anymore. A hallway that had long since been sealed off due to structural issues. But there were no permits filed for repair, no records of damage, no explanation. Just a wing that slowly disappeared from memory, as if it had been erased, not from paper, but from routine, from schedule, from use. The door itself was unremarkable at first glance. Old, pale green paint. Faded numbers that once read 3C, barely visible beneath layers of dust. The handle was rusted. The lock broken from the inside. Whoever last closed that door, ... didn't want it opened again. It took a crowbar to pry it open. And when it did give way, what lay inside didn't make sense. Desks stacked like barricades against the windows. Chairs pushed into corners like someone tried to clear the floor. Textbooks from the early 90s, untouched. Not even moldy. Just ... waiting. And there, against the far wall, half covered by a broken science poster, the backpack, still zipped, still intact. But before we talk about what was inside, we need to ask the question no one could answer. Why was that room locked for nearly 3 decades? The school claimed it had been out of use since 1994, that it was deemed unsafe after a partial roof collapse. But when investigators checked the structure, they found no damage. No signs of a leak. No warped beams. Not even a water stain. The ceiling tiles were stained, yes, but only from time. There were no cracks, no signs of instability. What they did find, however, were scratch marks on the inside of the door, small, horizontal, at the bottom of the frame, as if someone had tried, desperately, to claw it open from within. There were 13 marks, uneven, faint, but unmistakable. That was the moment the story changed. This wasn't just a forgotten room. It was sealed, hidden, and not for safety, for silence. A former faculty member who requested anonymity came forward anonymously in a letter sent to local media just months after the discovery. In it, they claimed that room 3C had always been a problem. Strange things happened there. Lights flickered. Clocks stopped. One teacher said the windows made her nauseous. Students refused to sit in the back row. We called it the dead room. The dead room. It wasn't listed on the current school maps. New hires were told it didn't exist. Even janitors were instructed to skip that hall. But why? Why pretend a room doesn't exist unless it holds something you don't want anyone to find? Theories began to surface. Urban legends resurfaced. Some believed the room had been used for detentions, unofficial ones, where students were sent for punishment that didn't follow protocol. Others whispered about things even darker. A temporary holding space. An office that had seen something it shouldn't have. A space where someone had waited to be found, and never was. But the school denied it all. Said the room was miscoded, that 3C had simply been phased out of rotation. But when asked why there were no files, no maintenance logs, no staff assignments, and no access keys, they had no answer. And when pressed about the scratches, the ones found on the inside of the door, directly across from the wall where the backpack sat, They called it likely rodent activity. Rodents don't claw in straight lines. They don't scratch 13 times, and they don't stop. Lillian's parents never knew about this room. They were told their daughter had vanished without explanation, that she may have run away, that she was never seen leaving the building, but that didn't mean she hadn't. But now, with this door pried open and this room exposed, a new possibility emerged. What if she never left? What if she was here the entire time? What if the school didn't lose her? It hid her. And if that's true, if she was placed there, trapped there, forgotten there, then who locked the door? And why did they never speak? Because silence doesn't just happen. It's enforced. It's built into the walls. And some rooms are designed not to be forgotten, but to make you forget. Room 3C was never just a room. It was a graveyard of memory, a container for what no one wanted to face, a void where noise went to die. And now it's open, and what we found inside isn't ready to be quiet anymore. The janitor who watched in silence. His name was Thomas Rooker, but most people just called him Mr. Tom. He was one of those people you barely noticed in high school. Always present, always moving, yet invisible in the way that staff on the edges of authority often are. He opened the school at 6 a.m. every morning, locked it up at night, fixed squeaky doors, replaced fluorescent bulbs, and swept up the stories students left behind in the form of torn notes, muddy footprints, and broken pens. But what most people didn't know is that Mr. Tom had a master key, a literal one, the kind that opened every door in the building, including the one no one wanted to talk about. Room 3C. He never spoke of it, never mentioned it in reports. And if you asked other custodians who worked alongside him in the early 90s, they'd say the same thing. He avoided that room like it had teeth. He worked at the school for 15 years, but 6 months after Lillian disappeared, he quit. No notice, no explanation, just gone. His locker was found empty. The keys left inside a folded towel. The only personal item he left behind was a photo, faded and cracked, of the school building itself, taken from a distance on a cloudy day. When investigators revisited his personnel file after the backpack was found, they noted something strange. His final time card was dated a Friday, but he was seen at the school the following Sunday, alone, unlocking the East Wing. Security footage from that day is missing. One camera was disconnected. Another had a blank tape. But a substitute teacher doing prep work that same weekend swore they saw him in the hallway, just past 3C, standing still, staring at the wall. He looked like he was listening, she said, not like someone trying to fix something, like someone waiting for something to respond. When pressed, she admitted she didn't say anything at the time. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But the look on his face stayed with her, not confused, not tired, just ... resigned, like he knew something was going to happen. Over the years, Mr. Tom disappeared from records. No forwarding address, no retirement papers, no new job listings. Some people say he died, others say he left the state. But one person, a former colleague who worked nights, claimed they received a letter in 1996. No return address, no greeting, just a folded sheet of paper. On it was a single sentence: "I should have locked it from the outside." That sentence raised more questions than it answered. Locked what? And why did he think it mattered which side the lock was on? Was it because something was in there? Or someone? When asked if Mr. Tom had ever spoken about Lillian, most staff said no. He wasn't the type to get involved in gossip. But one science teacher recalled a conversation, brief and unsettling, just weeks after the disappearance. They were both in the break room. The teacher asked casually if he had seen anything unusual that day. Mr. Tom paused. "Some doors you don't open twice," he said. "Not if you care about sleeping." Then he walked away. After the backpack was discovered, the school board made a half-hearted attempt to reach out to former employees, including Mr. Tong. No one could find him. But then something strange happened. A handwritten envelope arrived at the school, addressed to no one in particular. Inside, no letter, only a key, old, rusted, and labeled 3C. They compared it to the current master keys. It was a perfect match, but it shouldn't have existed. That specific key was reported destroyed in 1995. And yet, here it was, clean, wrapped in a piece of cloth. Delivered by someone who never wanted to be found, but clearly wanted something to be remembered. People like Mr. Tom don't just vanish. They choose to. And sometimes, they take secrets with them. But other times, they leave behind just enough to make sure those secrets don't stay buried forever. The diary with no name. It was the first thing they touched. After the backpack had been carefully unzipped, after gloves were put on and every step was photographed, the investigators reached inside and found it sitting flat against the bottom. A notebook, unlabeled, untitled, worn but intact. No mold, no tears, just age. It had no name on the cover, no school logo, not even a subject. Just a gray, soft exterior, the kind you'd buy in a pack of 3, with no clues about who it belonged to, except that it was inside her bag. They opened it. The first few pages were blank, clean, crisp, as if someone had flipped past them on purpose, skipping over the ordinary. Then, halfway through, handwriting began to emerge, not dated, not structured, no headers, no assignments, only fragments. Scattered sentences, incomplete thoughts, like a mind unraveling, or someone trying to leave behind pieces of something they were afraid to say out loud. They keep asking questions I already answered. The lights blink in patterns now. I counted 6 short, 2 long. I don't think they know what's behind the wall, but I heard it. No one looks up anymore. That's the problem. They don't look up. Page after page. Each line more fractured than the last. He smiled today. But it didn't reach his eyes. Someone was in the room before me. I could smell the cologne. They told me to stop writing. But I didn't bring this notebook to school. That last sentence made everyone freeze. She didn't bring it? Then whose was it? Or did she mean something else? That the notebook had been brought, but not by her? Was she documenting something she didn't want anyone to know she noticed? Something happening inside the school? One line stood out, written in darker ink, underlined twice. If this is found, don't believe the fire drill. There was no record of a fire drill the day she disappeared. But there was a drill scheduled for the following week, and then suddenly canceled. No reason given, no explanation. Another sentence, half erased, written near the edge of the page. I think room 3C is breathing. Investigators hesitated at that one. Dismissed it as poetic metaphor, teen imagination. But when you read the rest of the pages, the mood shifts. There are no names mentioned. No accusations, just patterns. References to hallways that change temperature too fast. Descriptions of footsteps that don't match the number of people in the room. And a strange obsession with clocks. She wrote down times repeatedly. 9:13, 9:16, 9:17, 9:17, 9:17. That time appears over 20 times throughout the notebook. Sometimes circled, sometimes underlined. Once written backwards, as if viewed through glass. The final page isn't written. It's torn, cleanly, almost surgically, as if someone removed whatever she had written there. After the fact, the very last line on the preceding page reads, "If they find this, it means they weren't fast enough." That sentence changed everything, because it didn't read like a goodbye. It read like a countdown. Who was supposed to find the notebook? Why was speed so important? And what did she mean by they? To this day, the diary has never been officially released to the public. What we know comes from whistleblowers, anonymous leaks, fragments shared by retired detectives who still wake up in cold sweats thinking about what they read. But the notebook itself, the real object, was quietly moved from the school district's evidence locker to a private storage facility owned by a third-party law firm. No explanation, no reason given. When asked, the school district said it was to protect the integrity of the investigation. But what investigation? The case had been cold for decades. So why the secrecy? Why the silence? And why, after all these years, does no one want the truth written in that notebook to see the light of day? Because maybe it's not just a diary. Maybe it's a warning. A message written in real time from someone who saw something no one else was supposed to see. Someone who vanished before she could finish the last page. And the more you read it, the more you realize this wasn't the writing of a scared girl. It was the writing of someone who knew. Clocks that stopped at 9:17. There are things the human brain registers as unsettling long before it understands why. A light that flickers in a pattern too precise to be random. A hallway that feels longer coming back than it did going in. A sound that repeats but never quite matches itself. But few things disturb like a clock that has stopped, because when time stops, it suggests something else hasn't. In the weeks following Lillian's disappearance, investigators combed through every inch of the school, floor by floor, room by room. It was during this sweep that a detail emerged no one could easily explain. 2 analog clocks, located on opposite sides of the building, had frozen at the exact same time, 9:17 a.m. One in the school library, the other in the art room. No relation between them. Different power grids, different circuit panels, no shared wiring, and no outages reported. The minute hands had stopped in perfect symmetry. Not slightly off, not mid-shift, dead still, like a photo, like a moment captured and preserved, but only on the clocks. At first, it was brushed off. Old wiring, coincidence, but then teachers began talking. One said she remembered glancing at the library clock that morning and feeling like something was wrong with the air, like the pressure had changed. Another swore she heard what sounded like static coming from the ceiling vent at that exact moment. And one student claimed the fire alarm lights blinked. Not the sound, just the lights. Once, briefly, without triggering the system. None of these things made it into the official report. Too strange. Too unprovable. But they all happened at 9:17. And then there was the hallway camera. Old security footage from a black and white hallway cam showed a strange skip in the time code. Exactly at 9 hours 17 minutes and 3 seconds. For 4 seconds, the video goes blank. No static, no fuzz. Just gone. When it returns, the hallway is exactly as it was before, but the frame rate stutters. Almost like time tried to continue, but something was holding it back. The tech team couldn't replicate the issue. There were no magnetic disruptions, no faults in the camera. But when the footage was played back, frame by frame, a shadow appears across the floor just before the cut, a long, narrow shape moving against the light source. Too thin to be a person, too steady to be random. The tape was archived, then mysteriously lost. Later, in 2002, during renovations, a new wing was being constructed behind the old East Corridor. As construction crews began clearing out electrical wiring, they found a junction box inside, 2 old wall clocks with disconnected hands. One of them was labeled Library, the other Art. The hands had been glued in place, frozen deliberately. But not at 12 o'clock like most display clocks. At 9:17? Why? Why choose that time? Why falsify a moment in such a specific physical way? Some theorists believe that 9:17 wasn't when she disappeared. It was when she was hidden. As if time for the building stopped keeping track the moment it was told to forget. One teacher, who asked not to be named, recalled a moment of panic that same morning. She had been grading papers during her free period in the lounge when she realized the wall clock wasn't moving. She checked her watch, 9:17. She got up, left the room, walked to the main office to report it. On the way there, she passed the east wing and heard the intercom system hum to life. No words, just a single buzz. Then nothing. She said she felt her skin prickle, like she was being watched from behind a door. When she arrived at the office, the secretary looked at her strangely. "We just fixed that clock last week," the secretary said. "It shouldn't be frozen," but it was. 2 hours later, Lillian was declared missing. It's a strange thing, isn't it? How time, which never stops for anyone, seems to pause when it knows something isn't right. And now, decades later, 9:17 has become something else. A scar etched into the walls of a school that won't talk. A silent witness no one can cross-examine. A number that appears again and again in reports, in rumors, in the diary. The more you look at it, the more it feels like a signature. Not from her, from whatever was watching. The rehearsal that was suddenly canceled. Theater was her safe place. Among all the noise of high school, the pressure, the gossip, the uncertainty, it was the one space where she could step out of herself and into someone else. The script gave her structure. The stage gave her purpose. She wasn't the loudest or the most charismatic, but when she was acting, something in her changed. She took up space. She belonged. That's why no one understood why she missed rehearsal. It was scheduled for the afternoon of her disappearance. A Monday, right after 6th period. They were running scenes from Act 2 of The Crucible. She had the lead. She'd been memorizing her lines for weeks. Her script was still in her locker. Her costume pieces were hung neatly on the rack backstage, but she never showed up. And here's where the story fractures, because technically, there was no rehearsal that day. According to the official schedule, the rehearsal had been canceled that morning. An announcement had supposedly been made during homeroom, but none of the students remembered hearing it. No one could agree on who canceled it, and the drama teacher was out sick, which, according to school records, was unexpected and undocumented. She had called in just minutes before the first bell rang, saying she wasn't feeling well. That wasn't like her. She was known for being obsessive with routine, never missed a day, never canceled rehearsals last minute. And yet, that day, she did, and no substitute was brought in. Instead, the auditorium lights remained off, the stage empty, the red curtains closed. Later that week, when her disappearance had taken over every conversation, a group of students claimed to have received a handwritten note in their lockers, unsigned, telling them the rehearsal was rescheduled for Thursday. The handwriting didn't match any staff. Security footage showed no one approaching those lockers during the day. And yet the notes were there, folded the same way, worded almost identically. Rehearsal rescheduled. Do not be late. Don't mention this to anyone. Some saw it as a prank. Others, especially those who knew her, believed it was a message, or maybe a warning. And here's where it deepens. One of the backstage crew members, a senior named Marcus, later admitted something strange. He had been in the auditorium at lunchtime, adjusting the lighting board, when he noticed the center stage mic was on, live, feeding static into the main speakers. That wasn't supposed to happen. He walked over to shut it off and swore he heard a faint whisper before he cut the feed. Not words, just breath. Sharp, quick, right against the mic. He froze, waited. Nothing. He didn't report it. He didn't want to be laughed at, but he unplugged the system entirely and left the auditorium. Later, when he found out she had vanished, he told the police. They dismissed it. But he never forgot, especially because of what he found under the lighting board 2 days later. A single script page, her script, marked with fresh pencil lines, 3 sentences underlined, one of them circled. We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful who we pretend to be. It wasn't from the Crucible. It wasn't from any play they had rehearsed. It wasn't even part of the script. No one knows who wrote it. But the pencil used was the same kind issued by the school in art class, the same class Lillian had attended the week before, and it raised a question no one could shake. Had she planned to meet someone in the theater that day? Had she gone there after second period before anyone realized she was missing? And if so, was that the real rehearsal? Not for a play. For her disappearance. Some believe she was lured there, that the cancellation was a cover, that someone knew she'd come if the schedule said not to. Others think the cancellation wasn't official at all, that it was rewritten after the fact to erase the window in which she vanished. What we do know is this: the last confirmed time she was seen was walking toward the East Wing. The East Wing connects directly to the backstage area through a stairwell few students ever used, a dark passage, a narrow door, no cameras. And on that day, at 9:17 a.m., someone turned off the house lights in the auditorium manually. That switch is located backstage, next to the mic, next to the lighting board. And once they're off, no one can see who's waiting in the wings. The cassette tape with no voice. It was nestled between a folded hoodie and a pack of chewing gum at the bottom of her backpack. A standard cassette tape, black plastic, no case. No label on the spine. Just a single piece of masking tape across one side with 2 words written in hurried pen. Vocal warm-ups. At first, investigators assumed it was just what it claimed to be, a practice recording for theater. It made sense. Lillian was rehearsing a lead role. She often recorded herself to memorize lines, test inflection, and study emotion in her voice. But when they tried to play it, they found something odd. The tape wasn't blank, but it wasn't a vocal warm-up either. Instead, it was filled with low-frequency static, the kind of ambient noise you'd get from an old radio caught between stations. A dull, persistent hum that wasn't quite white noise. More like something pressing against silence from the other side. They adjusted the volume. Nothing changed. They fast-forwarded, still static. But then, at exactly 2 minutes and 42 seconds in, a fluctuation. A brief dip in the tone. Almost like a breath. Then another. Then something else. Not quite a word, but not noise either. It sounded like a syllable. A whisper. A vowel that never formed into speech. Too soft to be casual. Too deliberate to be a glitch. Audio technicians were brought in to analyze the tape. They scrubbed it, digitized it, ran it through spectral filters, and enhanced the background layers. What they found left them speechless. Beneath the surface noise, buried in the waveform like a thread sewn into fabric, was a pulse, rhythmic, repeating, measured exactly every 6 seconds. And then, faintly, a voice. So soft it could barely be detected, as if someone were whispering into the microphone from across a room. It wasn't Lillian's voice. It was lower, male, perhaps, but uneven, distorted, like someone hiding behind a wall and speaking through it. The voice repeated a phrase, over and over, layered into the static. She knows. 6 seconds of static, then the whisper. Again and again. The phrase was embedded deep into the recording, not recorded on top of something, but seemingly within it, like it had been spliced in or buried during duplication. But no one ever found the original. No master tape, no dubbing deck, no indication of where or when it was made. The handwriting on the label wasn't hers. This was confirmed by comparing it to her journals, notebooks, and school records. It had a different slant, different spacing, different pressure. So who wrote it? And more importantly, why was it in her bag? Lillian didn't own a cassette recorder. Her friends said she used her dad's when she needed to record lines, a large stereo unit that stayed in their living room. But that tape never passed through that stereo. It was untouched, no fingerprints, no oils, just dust, as if it had been planted, waiting to be found decades later. The audio engineer, a man with over 30 years of experience restoring damaged tapes, said something chilling during his report. "It's not what's on the tape that scared me. It's what's not. The silence is too clean, like something wiped it. Or like something else is in there, but it doesn't want to come through unless you let it." He refused to work on it further, left the project, later moved out of state. The final report logged the contents as inconclusive, non-standard recording anomaly. But that didn't stop the rumors. Students, especially those who had spent time in the school theater, began whispering about the tape curse. They claimed the drama room had gone cold after the backpack was found. Lights flickering, speakers buzzing when unplugged. One student swore she heard her name whispered through the auditorium monitor, only to find no one else in the room. And all of them described hearing the same sound at different moments. A low, droning hum, not from inside the school, from inside themselves, like the tape had followed them. The school board, when questioned about the audio file, denied its existence. They said no tape was recovered, no analysis was performed, no whisper was ever heard. But someone's lying. Because when the original police evidence catalog was leaked online in 2011, the tape was listed. Item number 0047 cassette, vocal warm-ups, status, unresolved audio anomaly, location. Withheld, where is it now? No one knows. But there are copies, bootlegs, digital rips posted briefly, then taken down. Whispers shared in encrypted files across hidden forums. Some say if you listen with headphones, really listen, you can hear another voice layered even deeper. Not saying she knows, saying something else, saying your name. The student list that changed on its own. Every mystery begins with a disappearance, but some don't end with one. Some multiply. Lillian's case was clear in one way. She was enrolled. She was present that day. Her locker existed. Her backpack, her class schedule, her records, all intact. The attendance sheet from Monday, September 27th, 1993, showed her name in homeroom. Checked off. Marked as present. But in 2006, during a routine digital archiving project meant to modernize decades of handwritten records, a district employee found something odd. It was a digitized version of Lillian's class roster. The file looked clean, organized, logged with a timestamp. But when they compared it to the physical records in storage, the ones still yellowing in dusty filing cabinets, the numbers didn't match. The paper list had 31 names. The digital one had 30. Lillian's name was still there, but someone else's wasn't. No strike through. No note saying the student had transferred. Just ... missing. A clean break, like they had never existed. The staff member flagged it, reported it to IT. A meeting was held. Initial explanations were benign. Data corruption, a clerical error. Maybe the original document had a duplicate name that was cleaned during the scanning process. But it didn't. The missing student's name wasn't duplicated. It was unique. There was no reason for it to vanish. So they checked other records, yearbooks, grading reports, lunch logs, library signouts. Can something terrifying happen? That name, the one missing from the roster, was missing everywhere. As if someone had gone through, line by line, and erased a person from existence. Not just forgotten, deleted. But the yearbook photo? Still there. Not labeled. No name beneath it. Just a face. A pale boy in the second row, center left, looking directly into the camera with no expression. His image survived where the records did not. But who was he? When the yearbook team from 1993 was contacted, none of them remembered him. Not the editor, not the photographer, not the teacher overseeing the class. That spot in the photo was supposed to be empty, one student recalled. Someone had been out sick that day. We even joked about the gap in the lineup, but there was no gap. Not anymore. No, there was a face. A face no one recalled being there. Some suggested the image had been altered after the fact, photoshopped decades later. But this was a print yearbook. The original negatives confirmed the photo was authentic. He was there, but he shouldn't have been. No one had any memory of him speaking. No one sat next to him in class. No one remembered his locker number. No one could even agree on his name. What's more, he appeared in only that one photo. Nowhere else. Not in club rosters. Not in candid shots. Not even in the graduation list. Just one image. One moment. One silent boy looking back from a page that forgot he existed. And then someone remembered something else. The drama teacher, the one who called in sick on the day, Lillian vanished, had once mentioned a student who made her feel uneasy. He never spoke, never asked questions, never caused problems. But she said he always arrived exactly 3 minutes early and never once blinked when she called roll. She couldn't remember his name, but she remembered one thing with perfect clarity. He always sat in the back, never moved. And when I'd turn my back to write on the board, I could feel him staring. Not in a normal way, in a waiting way, like he wasn't part of the class, like he was watching it. That teacher left the school shortly after the incident. The digital archive team eventually gave up on identifying the lost student. Their conclusion was listed in the project report. Name removed during digitization, unable to recover. Likely clerical inconsistency. But someone, years later, found the code behind the file. An IT intern tasked with backing up archival data before the building was demolished opened the original scan log. And what they found wasn't a deletion. It was an instruction. A script, a custom string of code embedded within the file. Remove, redacted _entity _1993. It wasn't accidental. Someone, at some point, had programmed the absence. But who? And why? If it was meant to erase a person, they failed. Because the photograph remains. Because memory is stubborn. Because the past resists being rewritten once you've looked it in the eye. And that face? That blank expression, watching from the second row, left center, it's still there. In the physical books. In the photos that weren't burned. In the prints no one bothered to scan. They say he had no name. But maybe the truth is worse. Maybe his name was never meant to be known. Maybe he was never a student at all. Maybe he was watching her. And maybe he still is. The class photo that flickers. Photographs are supposed to freeze time. Capture it. Lock it in place so that even as the world changes, faces age, walls peel, memories blur, a picture stays exactly as it was. That's what makes this photo so disturbing. Because it didn't stay still. It moved. The 1993 class photo, a black and white group portrait taken in the early fall, just weeks before Lillian vanished, was one of the last images taken of her. She stood in the second row, third from the right, arms folded, smile faint, eyes soft but tired. There was nothing remarkable about the photo. Just a sea of students posed in front of the school's brick wall. A record of a class that would never be whole again. The original framed version was hung in the administrative hallway, along with photos from every other graduating class. Each year lined up in order. A quiet tradition. A visual archive. A history written in faces. But in 2017, a group of urban explorers, amateur documentarians, filming a series about abandoned schools, entered the building at night. They had flashlights, a drone, and a handheld camera with night vision. They moved slowly, narrating as they walked, pointing out peeling paint, fallen ceiling tiles, graffiti that looked too recent to be accidental. And then they turned a corner and found the hallway of class photos. All of them were intact, glass-covered, dusty, but untouched. They panned across the frames slowly, speaking in low voices. Then the camera stopped on the photo from 1993. The footage is still online, though it's been pulled down and reuploaded under dozens of different accounts. What it shows is subtle. At first, nothing seems wrong. The photo is dim under the flashlight beam, but Lillian's face is visible. She's there. The camera lingers on her for a few seconds, then moves away. But when it pans back, her spot is empty. Not blurred, not obscured, empty. Where her body had been, there's now just a brick wall. The outline of the student beside her seems unchanged. No movement, no shift in alignment, just a gap. The explorers go silent. The camera shakes slightly. One of them whispers, "Wasn't she just there?" They rewind the footage, frame by frame. They watch her face disappear, not flicker, not dissolve, just vanish. 3 frames, gone. Then, just as suddenly, she's back. Same pose, same faint smile. But now, her head is tilted slightly. Her eyes are no longer looking forward. They're looking directly at the camera. The footage ends abruptly after that, cut mid-sentence. The teen later posted a short message claiming their files had been corrupted. They refused interviews. They stopped uploading. But copies survived, and people watched, frame by frame, pausing, zooming, obsessing over every detail. One viewer, a former photography teacher, noticed something chilling. The version of Lillian that reappears after the flicker isn't the same one from the original photo. The difference is subtle. A change in her hair part, a slight wrinkle in her shirt collar, a glint in her eye that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just a glitch. It was a different moment, as if someone or something had replaced the original image with a variation, a mirror version, a message. And this wasn't the only report. Several staff who returned to the school over the years to clean out offices or retrieve personal items claimed that the photo had changed. One counselor said the girl in the picture seemed more tired each time she walked past. Another said the glass would be fogged over only on Lillian's face, no matter how many times it was wiped. And a janitor working during summer maintenance in 2008 filed a formal complaint with administration. He said the photo gave him nightmares. "She moves," he wrote. "You don't see it happening. But when you look away and back again, it's never the same." The complaint was ignored. The hallway was repainted. The frames removed. Today, no official copy of the 1993 class photo exists in the school archives. The yearbook version has been blurred, possibly due to print degradation, possibly for legal reasons. But the image lives online, in forums, in screenshots, in minds that can't forget what they saw when they pressed pause at the right second. Because when Lillian looks at the camera, you feel it. Not as a memory, but as a warning. Not from the past, from inside the photo, from wherever she went. Whatever happened to her, she didn't forget. And if that picture still flickers, maybe she's still trying to be seen. The mother who never let go. Some people stop searching when the trail goes cold, when the phone stops ringing, when the police stop calling, when the news stops reporting, but not her. Not Lillian's mother. For 28 years, she never stopped. Her name is Helen Cross, a soft-spoken woman with sun-damaged skin and the kind of voice that quivers but never breaks. When reporters first came to her doorstep in the fall of 1993, she stood in the driveway holding a photograph of her daughter in one hand and a list of names in the other. People she had already called, begged, questioned. She didn't cry on camera. She didn't make emotional pleas. She looked directly at the lens and said, "My daughter is not missing. She is somewhere, and I will find her." In the months that followed, Helen turned her home into a search command center. Walls covered in maps, timelines, class rosters, and photocopies of hallway schedules. She requested security footage, called state investigators, contacted psychics when the leads dried up. But the most enduring thing she did, the one that stuck in everyone's memory, was the birthday ritual. Every year on September 14th, she would return to the school. No announcement. No press. She'd walk up to the locked front doors, place a single white card at the base of the entrance, and tape a balloon to the handle. Then she'd stand there, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, until the wind took the balloon or the sun began to set. The first few years, janitors would collect the card, thinking it was debris. But after year 5, they stopped. They left it. Every September, like clockwork, the school would accumulate another white envelope, unopened, marked only with her daughter's name. Inside each was a letter, handwritten, unsealed. The content changed slightly every year. Sometimes it was a memory. Sometimes it was a question. Once it simply read, "Did they treat you kindly?" She never missed a year, even when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, even when her husband left, even when the school tried to have her banned from the property. She kept coming, and something strange began to happen. Teachers who hadn't worked there in decades reported seeing her, not just on the 14th, but throughout the year, walking silently along the fence, sitting in her car across the street during dismissal, taking notes. When asked why, she always gave the same answer: "Because if I stop watching, no one else will." She kept her daughter's room intact. Same posters, same bedspread, same stack of theater scripts by the window. The last one Lillian had read, The Crucible, sat open on her desk for over 2 decades, bookmarked with a pressed white flower. The ink had faded, but the lines she'd highlighted remained. "I want the light of God. I want the sweet love of Jesus. I danced for the devil." Helen never explained why she marked that passage, but every year she copied it into the birthday letter. Then the backpack was found. When authorities contacted her, she didn't answer, didn't speak to press, didn't attend the public statement from the school board. But 1 week later, a local journalist found something new taped to the school doors. A larger envelope. This one marked, "For those who said she left." Inside was a single photograph. A Polaroid, faded, damaged, but clear enough to make out 2 things. The first was Lillian's backpack, sitting against a wall. The second was a hand, small, delicate, pressing against the glass of a window. Nothing else. No caption. No date. No explanation. When asked how she obtained the photo, Helen didn't respond. She never spoke to reporters again. But on the 29th birthday, instead of a white balloon, she left something else. A key, wrapped in red string, and taped to a note that read, "She waited long enough." To this day, no one knows what that key unlocked. Some say it fit the East Wing's fire door, the one that had been sealed since 1994. Others say it was symbolic, a final gesture, a way of passing the search to someone else. But those who knew Helen say something different. They say it wasn't an ending. It was permission, a quiet, devastating permission to stop looking with eyes and start listening with memory. Because some mothers never let go, not until the world listens, not until the silence breaks, and not until their daughter, wherever she may be, knows she was never forgotten. The staff member who confessed, then disappeared. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't televised. It was a conversation behind a locked door. In 2007, 14 years after Lillian vanished and long after most leads had withered into dead ends, a man came forward. His name was Douglas Hartley, a former assistant administrator who had worked at the school for just over 2 years. He hadn't spoken publicly about the case since the early investigation. No interviews, no statements. He left the district a year after Lillian's disappearance and never returned to education. But then, one evening, he requested a private meeting with the school board. He claimed to know where she was. Those present in that meeting said his voice trembled, that he looked over his shoulder constantly, that he clutched a folder under his arm, full of papers, photocopies, hand-drawn floor plans of the school that no one had seen before. He began by stating the unthinkable. She didn't leave the building, he said. She couldn't. She never had the chance. He pointed to a wing of the school no longer in use, the same wing where room 3C had been sealed. He said it was built with maintenance corridors and observation rooms designed for special disciplinary cases in the 70s. Most had been locked by the 90s, but not all. He described hidden spaces between classrooms, closets with 2 doors, one visible, one hidden behind wall panels. He claimed he once walked past the east hallway and saw something he wasn't supposed to. "I saw someone lead her in," he whispered, "but I never saw her come back out." The room went still. According to notes from the meeting, which were later leaked by a former board secretary, Hartley then opened his folder and displayed an old key, labeled Access Sub-Corridor. He placed it on the table and said, "It's still there. Everything is. I tried to leave it behind. I tried to pretend I didn't know. But you can't sleep when the walls remember more than you do." The board asked for clarification. Who took her? Why? What did he see? But he refused to name names. He claimed it wasn't one person's doing, that the disappearance was part of something larger. When pressed, he grew agitated. He told them they were wasting time, that she's still there, and then stood abruptly. "I said more than I should," were his final words. "I shouldn't have come." He left the key on the table, walked out, and was never heard from again. Attempts to follow up with him failed. His phone was disconnected. His listed address was vacant. No family members came forward. He simply vanished, as if the ground swallowed him the moment he spoke. A few weeks later, the school board released a quiet statement. "We appreciate the concern and passion of those who continue to seek answers regarding the 1993 case. Any claims brought forward will be thoroughly reviewed. At this time, no evidence has been found to support the allegations discussed privately. No mention of Hartley. No mention of the key. No mention of what had been said behind closed doors. But something did happen. Construction crews working on demolishing old storage units reported being redirected. They were told to avoid the sublevels. That structural issues made the area unsafe. The redirect lasted 3 months. Then, silence. Years later, when a journalist revisited the case, she requested access to Hartley's personnel file. She was told it had been lost in a data migration, but what she found in an archived article from 1993 was enough to make her stop. Douglas Hartley had signed off on the building's final evacuation plan in the event of emergencies. On the blueprint, marked in red ink, was an alternate exit path from the east wing, a stairwell that didn't exist anymore, one that descended beneath room 3C, a stairwell no student ever used, no teacher ever mentioned, no fire drill ever accounted for. So why was it there? Why was it removed? And why did the one man who remembered it vanish the moment he spoke it aloud? Maybe he knew too much. Maybe he waited too long. Or maybe, like Lillian, the moment he walked through the wrong door, someone made sure he never came back out. The folded map hidden in the chalkboard. It was never meant to be found. Not by a student. Not by a teacher, not even by the crew tasked with tearing down the very bones of the building. And yet, during demolition of the East Wing in late 2021, nearly 30 years after Lillian vanished, a worker prying apart the remains of Room 3C discovered something strange wedged deep behind the chalkboard panel. Not debris, not wires, not trash. A folded map, old, yellowed, wrapped in a plastic sheet, sealed with black electrical tape, tucked between the inner drywall and the blackboard's backing plate. The only way to place it there would have been to remove the board entirely and then reseal it. But there were no signs of renovation, no tools left behind, no work orders that indicated any board in that room had ever been removed. The worker, confused, handed the find over to the site foreman, who, unsure of its importance, took photos and sent them to the school district's historical archives. What they revealed opened a door no one had expected. The map wasn't a blueprint of the entire school. It was only of one wing, the East Wing, the one where Lillian had last been seen, the one where her backpack was found, the one everyone had tried to forget. But this map was different. It showed paths that didn't exist on any official plan. Narrow corridors marked in faded red ink. Small rooms labeled only with initials, IROC, WV, and most striking of all, a stairwell, drawn lightly in pencil, looping downward from room 3C. No measurements, no labels, just an arrow marked, "Do not open." For weeks, specialists tried to verify the map's authenticity. The paper stock matched what would have been used in the late 80s. The ink had oxidized at a natural rate. The handwriting, though anonymous, matched no faculty member on record. But in the corner, in ink barely legible, a signature of sorts. D.H. Douglas Hartley? The same former staff member who confessed and vanished? The idea gained traction quickly. He'd claimed there were hidden spaces. He'd mentioned corridors behind walls. He had even brought an access key to the board before disappearing. Now, here was a map, tucked into the wall of the very room he claimed held the truth. Coincidence or proof? But then, something else emerged. As demolition continued, the workers were ordered to stop. A safety hazard was declared, and the entire area around room 3C was fenced off, despite passing every structural inspection up to that point. A security team was placed on site, work halted, and shortly after, the map disappeared from the public record. The only images that remain are grainy photographs leaked by the original crew. But one thing in those photos stands out. At the very bottom of the map, just below the hand-drawn stairwell, is a shape, not architectural, organic, a black oval, surrounded by lines that radiate outward like ripples in water. And next to it, in jagged handwriting, it sleeps beneath the floor. To this day, no one knows what that means. Some believe the oval represents a forgotten sub-basement. Others say it was metaphor, a symbolic warning from someone unraveling under the weight of what they saw. But there are those who think it's literal, that something or someone was sealed there, buried not with dirt, but with silence. And that Hartley, whoever he truly was, didn't leave the map as a clue. He left it as a confession. Because sometimes maps don't guide you to where you should go. They guide you to the places you were never supposed to find. The school board issued no comment. The map was misplaced, the workers reassigned, the chalkboard discarded. But one line from the construction log still exists. Filed the morning the map was pulled from the wall. Short, mechanical, forgettable. East wing wall cavity accessed. One document recovered. Floor beneath room 3C hollow. Hollow. And yet, nothing further was done. Or so they claim. The voice that spoke her name. The building had no power. No electricity. No working intercom system. And yet, it spoke. In 2019, a trio of urban explorers entered the old school one final time, just months before the East Wing was permanently sealed for demolition. They were part of a small but growing community of memory documentarians, creators who filmed abandoned places not for thrill, but for preservation, for stories, for ghosts. They brought cameras, flashlights, audio recorders, a spirit box, more for atmosphere than belief. Their goal was to capture the untouched decay of the school before the world erased it. They weren't looking for Lillian, but she found them. The footage begins as expected. Long, slow pans across collapsed ceilings. Graffiti scrawled over the word welcome, above classroom doors. Trophies still locked inside cracked glass cases. Silence broken only by footsteps and breath. Then, at 9:14 p.m., they reach the East Wing. Their voices drop. One comments that the air feels heavier. Another laughs it off. Just asbestos and dust. They pass room 3C. Flashlights flicker. The camera loses focus. They stop filming for a few minutes to change batteries. That's when the audio recorder, still rolling in a backpack, picks up the first sound. A buzz, soft, electric, like a speaker coming to life. Then a single word. Lillian, drawn out slowly. Whispered, but clear. Not from inside the building, from inside the system. Through a ceiling speaker, one of the old ones rusted, covered in cobwebs. They didn't hear it live, only during playback. And when they did, they froze. Because at exactly 9:17 p.m., the recorder captures it again. This time, louder. This time, spoken like a question. Lillian? One of the explorers, shaken, enhanced the audio later that night, ran it through filters, boosted the frequency, and beneath the voice was breathing, faint, panicked. Not the breath of someone speaking, but of someone listening, someone hiding. They tried to recreate the sound using software. They tried to debunk it, to say it was radio interference, an echo, a glitch. But they couldn't. There was no power in that wing. No backup generators. The speaker wasn't even connected to a functioning wall unit. It should have been silent. And still, it called her name. The next day, one of the explorers returned alone. She brought only an audio recorder. She stood in room 3C for 20 minutes. Didn't speak. Didn't move. When she returned home and played back the tape, she found exactly 4 minutes of silence. Then, at 17 minutes and 01 second, a sound, not a voice, a melody, soft, familiar. The first few notes of Happy Birthday, hummed by a female voice, slow and off-key. Then nothing, no more sound, no more humming, except at the very end of the tape, just before it clicks off. A whisper close to the mic. She's still here. That explorer never returned to the building. She deleted her social accounts, refused all interviews, moved out of state, but her recording leaked, just like the tape, just like the photo, just like the map, because some things refused to stay buried. The school board denied all of it. Again, they claimed the explorers had falsified their findings, that the voices were staged, that the building had been cleared of all equipment years before. But workers remember. They remember removing speakers from the west and north wings, but not the east. They remember power junctions in all areas, except near room 3C, and they remember one strange note on the original construction schematics, barely visible in the legend, printed in faded red ink. East Intercom, independent loop. Do not integrate. Why would one section have a private audio loop? Who had access to it? What purpose did it serve? And why, years later, when the building was dead and powerless, could a voice still whisper through it? Some believe the answer is simple. The system isn't broken. It's listening, waiting for someone to walk close enough, for the name to be spoken again, for the right moment to reply. What if she never wanted to be found? There's a version of this story that's easy to believe. A girl taken, a life stolen, a tragedy buried under red tape, silence, and bad luck. But there's another version, one harder to speak aloud, the kind that makes people lower their voices. Not because it's impossible, but because it might be true. What if Lillian wasn't taken? What if she disappeared on purpose? From the very beginning, there were things that didn't line up. The notebook in her bag, full of fragmented thoughts, cryptic warnings, and codes. The cassette, layered with whispers and silence that felt intentional, like a message hidden inside static. The map, drawn and sealed inside a chalkboard, as if someone knew a day would come when someone had to find it. The scratches on the inside of the door, the clocks that stopped, the intercom that called her name, all of them traceable, all of them left behind. And yet, not one of them said, "Help me, come find me, I'm scared." Instead, the messages were like footprints, but not ones that ran. They circled, they waited, they watched. Over the years, several psychologists who studied the case noted something unusual about Lillian's behavioral profile. She wasn't troubled in the conventional sense. No history of harm, no sudden outbursts, but she was fascinated by patterns. She journaled obsessively, not about emotions, about people, their routes through the school, when they entered and exited hallways, what time the bells rang versus when they were supposed to ring. She noticed pauses in conversation that didn't feel natural. She once told a friend that the school building felt alive, but not awake. Her mother found sketches of hallways taped under her mattress, sketches with no people, only shadows, numbered. She was always looking for something, her mother once said, or maybe trying to understand something we couldn't see. What if she did? What if Lillian discovered something in that school that no one else noticed or wanted to notice? And what if she didn't run from it? What if she stepped into it? One of the most chilling notes in her unnamed diary, found late in the backpack's pages, reads, "They think I'm afraid to disappear, but I'm not. Disappearing is the only way to prove it's real." What did she mean? Was she talking about a person, a place, a presence, or something bigger? The folded map found years later included one phrase, scrawled in the margins. Some doors are one way, and maybe she chose to walk through one. Maybe she entered that room, 3C, knowing she wouldn't come out the same. Maybe she left the notebook, the tape, the clues, not to cry for help, but to test who else might be paying attention. Who would follow? Who would listen? Who would finally believe her? There's a theory, whispered by the few who have truly studied her case, that says she didn't vanish at 9:17 a.m. She changed direction, from reality to something adjacent, something she'd been watching for a long time, and waiting for it to open back up. Maybe the backpack wasn't forgotten. Maybe it was planted, an invitation, a breadcrumb. Maybe that voice on the tape wasn't warning us about her fate. Maybe it was repeating what she said to whoever stood on the other side of that door. She knows, because if Lillian truly saw what was underneath that school, if she truly understood what was living in its patterns, its rhythms, its hollowed-out spaces, then she didn't vanish. She stepped in. She became part of it, and that's why we still hear her name in the speakers. That's why her face flickers in the photograph. That's why clocks still stop at 9:17, because she never left. Not in the way we understand, not in the way we can reach. She's still inside the story, and maybe that's exactly where she wanted to be. And so the building stands silent now, the walls stripped bare, the floors emptied of chairs, chalk, and voices. No more bells, no more footsteps, only dust, and memory. They'll demolish it soon, level it, pave over it, raise something new on top of its bones. But some structures don't vanish with bricks and beams. Some stories stay woven into the space between things, into cracks, into corners, into silence. There's no plaque for Lillian, no statue, no corridor named after her. Only whispers, only moments, only questions that don't want answers. They want attention. Because maybe she wasn't trying to be found. Maybe she was trying to be remembered. And maybe she still is.